Soon we will be in phase 2 of Season of Discovery, and there are so many things to look forwards to. The new Gnomeregan raid with all its updated bosses and loot, the inevitable chaos of the STV PvP event, and of course a whole host of new runes to get excited about. Today though, I wanted to think about how us leveling up to 40 will affect our classes, both through our baseline abilities as well as new talents that we'll have access to. The level 25 bracket will end up being the most restrictive one for us by far, and just getting to level 40 even without the new runes would see big power increases for many classes. And no, this isn't going to be a speculation video for future runes because we really have no idea, so I'm just not going to worry about that too much. Okay, maybe I'll speculate about once or twice, but it's not going to be what the video is all about. But even discounting new runes, I want to show you a little bit of how each class will be getting far more powerful with our current runes, known abilities and talents moving up to level 40. But first, a quick word from today's sponsor, Marvel Strike Force. Marvel Strike Force is a mobile squad RPG that immerses players in epic battles featuring their favorite superheroes and supervillains, all set in the expansive Marvel universe. In Marvel Strike Force, you power up your favorite characters by completing missions, unlocking new gear, and competing versus others in real-time PvP events. Of course, you can recruit a whole host of iconic characters from across the multiverse, and if you're a new player, you can unlock 17 characters within the first 30 days, including tons of the most well-known names such as Spider-Man, Deadpool, Captain America, and loads more. On top of that, new characters are regularly added to the roster, the most recent ones being the symbiote versions of Silver Surfer and Ghost Spider. The meta is constantly changing in the game too, and new ways to battle are frequently added to the list of game modes. There's a campaign, of course, there are arenas, but also alliance wars, raids, and plenty of PvP events as well. Marvel Strike Force also has a unique way of introducing new characters by running polls, so you can have a say in the future of the game, and you also get some in-game rewards for doing so as well. With a constantly expanding roster, new game modes, and tons of in-game rewards, it's a great time to start. You can also unlock characters and costumes from Marvel movies, TV shows, comics, and more. For a limited time this month, if you use the QR code or click the link in the description, you'll unlock exclusive characters for free by logging in. Celebrate the release of Marvel Studios Echo by unlocking Echo for free. Marvel Strike Force's third character poll is also underway, where the top 2 choices will become members of the upcoming Alpha Flight team. Also, don't forget to use promo code CARDS for additional in-game rewards. Many thanks to Marvel Strike Force for the sponsor today. Let's get back to WoW. Warlock first. So if you played the whole demonology tank thing so far this season, I'm sure you felt the burn of not having real AoE threat. Yes, there is Shadow Cleave, but it's just not very good, is it? So you end up tabbing and spamming Searing Pain. Now, I've seen plenty of comments over Phase 1 saying, wouldn't it be cool if Demonology had some kind of immolation type aura effect, similar to what Metamorphosis has in Wrath of the Lich King? And I have to say, I'm not sure Blizzard wants to give each tank good access to single target and AoE threat as part of a design choice this season. But even if we don't get a rune that does an immolation or a type effect, we already have it in the game. Kind of. It's learned at level 32, and it's called Hellfire. The Warlock channels over 15 seconds, causing 87 fire damage to themselves and all targets around them. Now, if we combine that with the Intensity talent in the Destruction tree, you avoid 70% of all spell knockback effects, which is already pretty good. But if we add a concentration aura on the Alliance on top of that, you can reach spell knockback immunity, and the same can even be achieved on the Horde side now if you keep Earth Shield up all of the time. In other words, you can just run into a bunch of mobs and sit there full channeling a Hellfire, and as long as there are no interrupt or stun effects, it's just gonna go through. And if there are, well, you can bring a free action potion and avoid that quite easily. But wait, there is more. So the Pyroclasm talent has a chance to add a stun onto Hellfire. Now, apparently this percentage chance for it to stun is once per channel, not per tick. Not so sure about that myself, but it still seems decent though. The interesting bit is when we add on our current runes though. So if you precasted an Incinerate on pull into a Lake of Fire, you're doing 65% bonus fire damage. This means Hellfire will go from 87 a tick to about 144. This means over 15 seconds, it'll be doing over 2,000 damage baseline. Sounds like a pretty nice setup for dungeons when you're gonna be running these runes anyway. You just do need to respec into Destruction a little bit. Are there issues with this then? Well, there's 2 of them which I can see, yes. The first one up is You guessed it, spell ranks. Rank 1 Hellfire is learned at level 32, rank 2 is rather painfully at 42, and rank 2 increases the base damage from 87 to about 144. If we had rank 2 with the extra fire runes active, it would be ticking for 238 a second, which would be completely insane. The second issue is, the extra fire damage you deal is probably going to also mean extra fire damage which you take as Hellfire ticks. Sure, you're going to be doing a lot of AoE damage to everything around you, but you're also going to be face tanking at the same time. Still, with this, you should definitely be holding AoE threat, and it'll give the healer something to do, won't it? Next up is Mage. Mages are already doing unreal things in dungeons with their new toolkit. Regeneration, Living Flame, and Living Bomb are allowing them to effectively pull over 100 mobs in dungeons and straight up face tank them whilst healing through their damage, due to how the power of their heals scale directly from the number of mobs that there are. And this is classic Mage too, so there is no diminishing returns for AoE effects after hitting a certain number of enemies. You could be hitting 100 or 1 million enemies, your abilities do the same damage. No wonder they changed this in TBC, by the way, but we aren't in TBC, we're in vanilla, so Mages doing crazy stuff is very much in flavour. I also think Living Flame at the moment kind of goes to show you why when Blizzard did give Discipline Priests Atonement, they never gave them any extremely powerful AoE effects. So what I want to see at 40 is just how far can people take this. At the moment at 25, we don't really have too many dungeons to test, and people just tend to boost or farm Ragefire Chasm or the Wailing Caverns. But by 40, we'll have Razorfen Crawl, the Scarlet Monastery, assuming it's open, parts of Alderman, and parts of Razorfen Downs. But the biggest potential for money making is definitely in Zul'Farrak. Back in 2019, Classic Zul'Farrak was one of the go-to farming spots for mages, specifically the zombies that spawned in the rooms with the graves as you ran over them. Now the mobs there are level 43 to 44, so it's probably not going to work too well, especially since they're going to hit way harder and will have a much higher chance to resist spells, but their drop table for BOEs due to their level is going to be extremely good. There's also a chance the anti-boosting and gold farm changes are in the game from Season of Mastery 2, which if you didn't know made these Zul'Farrak zombies just drop less stuff in general because, well, they were way too good. Either way, whilst mages may have to go back to kiting mobs instead of face tanking elites, I kind of want to see how far they'll be able to push this new playstyle once we hit level 40. Maybe you even take a duo into Zul'Farrak, it could really be that good. For Priest, I don't have too many things to say really. My biggest hope for the phase is that Shadow Priests do start to come online, but for it to really do that it both needs better mana efficiency as well as some better scaling through stats. I've said it before, but Shadow Priests really gain a whole bunch through talents between 25 and 40. Shadow Weaving can stack up a plus 15% damage debuff on an enemy, Darkness is flat 10% more damage, and of course Shadow Form is a further 15% on top of that. But if you gave Priest straight up 40% more damage to all Shadow spells right now, as we are at the moment, they would probably move towards the middle of the table for PvE, whilst becoming completely insane in PvP, so it's gonna be a tough balance. I think an ability next phase not to sleep on is actually Mind Control. You get it at level 30 and it works on mobs up to level 44. We already know Noma's gonna be the new raid, and I'll bet just like BFD, it has a bunch of new humanoid mobs inside, and they may well have some crazy buffs or debuffs that can be abused through Mind Control. And Mind Control has had a role in raiding here and there throughout Classic already. You can get a fire resist buff from Upper Blackrock Spire, which is super useful when taking on Ragnaros to reduce damage taken, and Smelt Elementium, needed for Thunder Fury, is from a goblin that you have to mind control inside a Blackwing Lair. It should be interesting to see what new interactions this spell can have with the new content though. Next is Druid, and what I want to talk about is Star Surge. If you thought this ability was annoying this phase, just wait until Boomies have all their talents by level 40. One thing it does say on the tooltip is that Star Surge benefits from most effects related to Wrath or Starfire, but I'm assuming it's just worded like this, so it's not intended to double dip from talents which affect both of those spells. Among other things, Moonkins will of course get Moonkin Form, which is okay in vanilla. Honestly, it's more of a PvP talent. It grants 3% spell crit to party members, not the 5% it did in TBC, as well as granting 360% bonus armor contribution from items. Also, you can't cast utility restoration spells in Moonkin Form, and it has no mana regen effects directly tied to it. But aside from that on the talent tree for buffing up Star Surge, You have Moon Fury, which is just going to give you 10% more damage. Vengeance, increasing the critical strike damage bonus by 100%, so it will deal 2 times damage instead of 1.5 when it crits. And improves Starfire, which will give Star Surge a 15% chance to stun for 3 seconds. So druids at 40 will now be casting a 42-yard range, 2 times crit modifier, 15% chance to stun, instant cast nuke, which will cost about 10 or 12 mana with a 6-second cooldown. That sounds pretty good to me, actually. Also at 40, druids get some pretty key abilities for general use too. Dire Bear Form is just a bear form but better in all aspects. Feline Grace is your safe fall effect so you don't get knocked out of prowl from full damage. And you get Innovate too, which no doubt your arcane mages will be informing you that they need off cooldown. The rogue has a bunch to look forwards to as we head towards 40, including baseline abilities such as Safe Fall, Cheap Shot, Kidney Shot, and Blind. It's kind of your whole PvP toolkit you've been missing during Phase 1, and rogues are already pretty good in PvP at level 25 somehow, so they're going to be monsters at 40. For the rogue tanking identity, it's worth bringing up that as we begin to progress into these later dungeons and raid tiers, Blizzard started to really enjoy just putting stuns all over the place. And as a tank, usually getting stunned is bad, but for a rogue tank where you're far more reliant on mitigation rather than high armor to reduce damage taken, it's extra bad. So whenever you do take a stun and you're tanking a bunch of stuff, your damage taken is going to spike way harder than other tanks. Now, unfortunately, your PvP trinket doesn't remove stuns because different PvP trinkets do different things in vanilla, but if you're heading into a particularly dangerous pack or are looking to pull quite a bit, free action potions will go a long way to keeping you in the fight and not just sitting there in a stun taking way too much damage. Free action potions themselves are fairly cheap and will remain a consumable that's used throughout the entire game, so it never hurts to have a few of them with you. Also, we don't know if rogue tanks are going to get any form of AoE or an ability to allow ease of swapping combo points, and it's kind of similar to what I said about the locked tank. Blizzard don't seem to want every tank to have good AoE and good single target, but rogue at the moment really is just a pure single target tank. But for rogues to truly be the best on single target, they're going to need some insane threat generation to make up for the fact they're going to be constantly having to tab. And then there is the off chance that in Gnomeregan, a lot of things are immune to bleeds and poisons, such as the Roomful of Elementals where you usually jump down, as well as, well, mechanical stuff in general. It may be time to break out the daggers and hope that Slaughter from the Shadows gets some more supports so you can play a proper dagger build in this next level bracket. Whatever happens though, I can see rogues opting into playing combat from here on out though, unless there is some insane poison build that warrants going assassination. Blade Flurry and Adrenaline Rush are kinda just too good, and they only get better the shorter encounters are, and from what we've seen in BFD so far, and well, from how Classic usually is in general, I'm expecting some pretty fast encounters. Next we have Hunter, supposing they haven't been successfully nerfed out of the game by Phase 2 that is. Maybe it's just that Phase 1 Hunter was all about beast mastery, but Phase 2 will be with marksmanship and its abilities that scale with weapon damage will start to come online. But BM in Phase 2 really has a lot of things to be excited about. First up, you get a whole new pet which you couldn't access in Phase 1, the Gorilla. Elder Mistveiled Gorillas, those are the ones just outside of Booty Bay, are level 40, and have Thunderstomp rank 2, which is a big AoE ability. Unfortunately, however, in Classic it has a 1-minute cooldown. Perhaps we get Rune of the Gorilla, where its cooldown is reduced massively, and it becomes your big AoE ability alongside Explosive Shot. Because looking at pets so far, such as Scorpid and Wind Serpent, having big focus spenders that do magic damage has been a pretty good thing so far. But all the same, BM's talents next phase are going to be huge. It could be that all these Hunter nerfs Blizzard have been doing have just been in preparation of the power they will receive next phase. So with the future talent, your pet will have 15% bonus critical strike chance, 30% extra attack speed, 20% bonus focus regen, as well as Bestial Wrath as your final talent. And Bestial Wrath causes your pet to deal 50% bonus damage and be CC immune for 18 seconds. So yeah, even though Hunters have been getting nerf after nerf this phase, assuming pets still scale as well as they currently do, I'm expecting some pretty crazy performance next phase. Oh, and also a little side note for Hunters. If Blizzard can make a rune for Mongoose Bite for the melee Hunter so the ability is not legitimately a waste of gold to train, that would be great. Next we have Shaman, and in phase 1 the tanking spec has been amazing, but the other class identities have not quite been keeping up. I think Elemental has to be one of my top picks for a spec that should improve the most between 25 and 40. All the things at the bottom of your talent tree are just amazing. You'll be getting bonus range on Lightning Bolt and Chain Lightning, 100% bonus crit damage from Elemental Fury, taking you up to a 2x modifier, and this talent is also worded to include fire spells too, so this is going to affect your Lava Burst. Lightning Mastery will reduce your main spell's cast times, and of course Elemental Mastery for the big double crit this spec is famous for. Also, Elemental is one of the best placed specs in the game in terms of spell ranks, assuming that there's nothing being done about having poor spell ranks, that is, but rank 7 of Lightning Bolt is learned at 38, and rank 2 of Chain Lightning is at 40. This is literally about as good as it gets for being a caster. And on top of that, Blizzard buffed Overload to have a 50% proc chance, which is a crazy high number for all the abilities it affects. And don't forget, as a Shaman, you'll be getting Chain Heal, and that can proc off Overload too in Season of Discovery. And do you know when you learn Chain Heal? Level 40, so it's perfect spell rank wise. In fact, with Ancestral Guidance converting 100% of healing to damage, Restoration Shaman might even have these weird burst windows on certain bosses. Imagine the turtle boss in BFD, if after the shield breaks you stack everyone up and then just sent in 5 or 6 chain heals, with Ancestral Guidance and Trolls Berserking active, it would actually be doing quite a bit of damage back to the boss. For Enhance, of course, the thing you're all looking forwards to is Wind Fury Weapon, giving you a chance to gain 2 extra attacks. And there is kind of also a soft confirmation there will be a Rune to Push 2-handed enhancement too. There's even been things data mined such as the new automatic Crown Pummeler from Noma, which should be usable as well. I just hope Enhance gets a bit more in terms of new damage dealing abilities as well, and that Storm Strike sees a buff in some way, because its current version in vanilla is really weak. All in all though, Shamans are looking to get a lot of fun toys next phase, and that's with or without us knowing the new runes. And now we get to the Paladins. Now Holy for healers is a bit on the weaker side at the moment, but I swear it's not far off from being a crazy good healer in Season of Discovery. Next phase, you'll be getting Illumination in your talent tree, meaning spell crits restore all of the mana that you spent on them. What will really decide Holy Pallies though, is if Blizzard decide to give them a rune which actively does healing, such as Divine Radiance, Light of Dawn, Divine Light, something like that. At the moment, you can duplicate a bunch of heals thanks to Beacon of Light, but you're stuck casting these not very good classic spells. If you get a good rune alongside Beacon, Holy Pally stonks will go up fast. Holy Shock remains super underwhelming in Classic, however. They had to massively increase its damage and reduce its cooldown for Shock of Them to be a thing in TBC. Blizzard would have to make a rune to push this talent way beyond its capabilities at the moment. What I also want to see is whether tank paladins actually start to play prot and pick up consecration, and the determining factor is really going to be, will stuff in the raid actually be doing damage, or can you get away with being a rep pally that puts on Righteous Fury and just DPSs? Because in BFD, pala tanks are doing exactly this. Also, consecration is just, I mean, it's bad, like it's really bad. You can learn rank 3 at level 40, and it does 192 damage baseline over 8 seconds for 320 mana. You remember when we were talking about Warlocks earlier and how 1 tick of Hellfire could do 144 damage? Assuming it scales with the runes, that is. That's quite a big difference. This is kind of the thing about tanking in Classic though, it's all about threat, not mitigation. There is literally a handful of fights in the game that we know of at least where you must gear primarily for mitigation. The rest of the time you just generate as much threat as possible so your DPS don't have to stop what they're doing. We would need some real tank buster bosses in Gnomeregan for tanks to, well, start tanking properly. The final thing I want to see from Paladin's next phase is if anything new can be found with the Reckoning talent for PvP or PvE. So honestly, this is one of the most complicated talents in the game and has a bunch of rules which the game does not inform you of in any way whatsoever, such as losing rec stacks when mounting, and not even being able to see how many stacks you have. Thanks for that, Blizz. It's always been a fun talent in PvP though, especially when you fight someone that deals many small crits, such as a rogue or feral druid, and then you can just turn around Hammer of Justice, unleash the Rex stacks and one-shot them. Last but not least is the Warrior. So first, I have my tinfoil theory on why Warrior is going to be getting Titan's Grip next phase. So the data mined automatic crowd pummeler, which we looked at earlier, specifically has classes that can use it on its tooltip, and it excludes Warrior. Why would it do that? Because if you had Titan's Grip, you could put this on your offhand, and whenever it comes off cooldown, you could activate a 50% attack speed buff for 30 seconds. This would be unbelievably broken, perhaps even too overpowered for the Warrior class. Just imagine a 50% attack speed buff on demand with all the flat damage increases you have. We don't even know what new weapons there will be next phase, but judging by what we can get at the moment, I think we can assume they're going to be really powerful. Of course, this is just a theory based off a data mine, but yeah, this could be happening. Secondly is that depending on bleed immunities inside the raid, if you can bleed stuff, you're gonna be playing arms. So it turns out there's currently a different version of Deep Wounds in the game compared to the vanilla reference client, and it's interacting in ways which it usually doesn't, such as stacking its damage instead of refreshing and applying from offhands. This buff, and it is a buff, is playing a decent part in the Warrior's performance in BFD. And as long as this version of Deep Wounds exists, I can only see it getting stronger, and that Warriors will continue to build around it. It may be somewhat similar to the TBC version of Warriors, where you played arms, but you still dual-wielded instead of going two-handed. It's a bit more counterintuitive, but hey, more damage is more damage. And that is everything I have for today. One thing for each class that, given our current runes and the known abilities and talent switch coming at level 40, that we should have to look forwards to. Of course, the runes next phase are expected to be super impactful to gameplay, just as runes have been in phase 1. So whilst a ton is unknown about phase 2, we can still make some decent estimates for what will be possible. Let me know if there's any builds that you have planned for next phase and what abilities you're looking forwards to trying out the most in the comments down below. And as always, thank you all so much for watching and listening in, and I'll see you on the next one very soon.